We are live at Inspiration House. One of the handy things about owning two houses in Ohio is when we are social distancing, we can move between them because it's just us. Well, and the ghosts. Yeah, for now. Yeah, Inspiration House, of course, has been closed since pretty much early March.
Yeah. Everybody who was gonna stay here decided to stay home and be safe. And we got a much needed chance to fix up a lot of things.
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes. Currently installing a curtain between the sleeping room and the newly installed living bits of the creator suite. You need the light from that window, so. Yeah. I keep getting backlit and it's screwing the camera. Hey, there we go. That's a cool shot. You can see me and Illyria.
Oh, nice.
Perfect shot with the mirror. Hey, Sue. Hello to everybody. I don't have any plan for the live stream, honestly, other than like, hey, how y'all doing? How you holding up? I've been a little absent from social media because I don't know about you guys, but it's weird because when I'm writing, I'm a homebody. I don't leave the house for weeks at a time. I'm notorious for it. And there's something about the enforced, like nothing is open and just like all the angst online and everything that's made this more difficult than usual. But also the allergies have been real. Since Inspiration House was closed for so long, one of the interesting things is Lyra's doing that. We came in today and weirdly found a new thing moved around. We've found a couple of weird, so Inspiration House is one of the few hauntings that I've personally witnessed apports. Apportation of objects is an old paranormal investigator term. It basically means items appearing out of thin air, teleporting, handed over by ghosts, who freaking knows. The movie Poltergeist made much of apportation of objects. It's when like all of those things rain out of the ceiling. Usually they are nowhere near so dramatic. It's just something shows up somewhere. So we've had a couple of things show up here. We had a random spot of water that just sort of showed up out of nowhere in the middle of one of the floors. There was nothing that was leaking. There was nothing that could have leaked on it. It was obviously there for a while. Nothing tracked it in. It was just water in the middle of the floor. It was no idea where that came from. And today, this is the tiny twin room, which I think might have been used as a nursery at some point. Again, excuse my allergies. And this little hanging lamp, as you can see, has it's fairly stiff. Anyway, so when we came in, that was askew to one side, and the lampshade was also off center, and no idea how that happened. So that was a new one on us. Trying to remember, what was the last random thing that showed up here that was like just an object moved somewhere? I know that there was there was a bracelet of, I know that there was the note that showed up during the retreat. And there was something after that, and I forget what the heck it was. Oh, it was another one of the selenite rods that just sort of showed up in the middle of a floor. And, yeah.
Yeah, that was a weird one. This is a tiny bit too long still, so I'll be back from the garage.
Okay, yeah, go do your thing. I'm gonna go on the back porch. There's a family of squirrels out here, and as long as they don't end up in my garage or my attic, I'm cool with them. But you might be able to see them frolicking back there. possibly not so much because like that tree is like really close to the porch that we've had installed. Is the gathering in June still on? We've been getting a lot of questions with that. We're working with the hotel at Oberlin. The short answer is it's really unlikely that we're going to have any in-person thing. We're working to reschedule it. Pardon me while I fuss with my hair. And move it to a different date. One of the reasons we haven't made a formal announcement is we're waiting until we have that date. But honestly, don't count on, I mean, San Diego Comic-Con is canceled, Wimbledon is canceled, what else is, like everything is canceled. I think it's just a good idea to assume that convention season and convention going is going to be a very different animal going forward. And I'm not sure how long that will last. The thing about what's going on with us in the whole world with COVID is it's very reminiscent of what happened with the Spanish influenza outbreak in the early 1900s. And the thing to keep in mind with that was there was an initial outbreak and people, handled it in much the same way we're handling it right now. Some people quarantined, some people put their masks on, some people wore asshats and just didn't want to do anything at all. And the end result was that it hit in 1918 and then it came back in 1919 with a vengeance. So as bad as they thought it was in 1918, it was worse in 1919. And I'm truly hoping we don't go that route, but this really is one of those cases where if you read up on that time period in history, we are pretty much retreading point by point almost everything. The one thing is the city of Philadelphia and the mayor of Philadelphia is just like the entire United States reaction. So I don't know. I wish I had comforting insight on it. And I know a lot of people are like, but you're psychic, so what does your psychic sense tell you? And I'm like, I have way too big of an emotional investment in what's going on right now, and so much psychic noise from the world around me that I think it would be the height of irresponsibility for me to make any prognostications or predictions based off of those impressions, because there's too many unknowns, there's too much personal involvement, there's so much front loading, conscious or otherwise, and I think we just need to play it by ear, take one day at a time. It's very bright out here, and it sounds like everybody's out with their chainsaws. Not sure if that's a chainsaw or a motorbike. All right, Illyria has returned with the pole for which to hang the curtains.
Hopefully successful this time.
All right, well, hopefully you didn't take too much off.
Oh, I didn't.
Janice, yeah, the mayor in the movie Jaws. It's. I think the hardest thing for me with a lot of stuff is like the predictive fiction. Like I grew up reading Stephen King's The Stand, and I read Chuck Wendig's Wanderers not too long ago, and I made a post on Twitter the other day that was sufficiently insightful. Sufficiently insightful, something about the zeitgeist. Basically, distilling the zeitgeist down into speculative fiction is indistinguishable from prophecy. Like, it's not like these people are so much predicting the future as part of a good fiction writer's job is to observe the world around them and to kind of distill what's going on and then present a highly probable reality. Like some of the appeal is that it could happen. And every once in a while that could happen turns into, holy shit, you were kind of like right on the ball. And now we have curtains that won't fall down. Yay.
At last.
This is the cozy little space in the creator suite for sleeping. We're still working on the shelves. And by working on them, I mean like what goes on the shelves and how do we arrange the shelves.
What books have the honor of sitting here with
Yeah,
people?
yeah, in this
Us.
particular space. We are in Oberlin, Ohio right now, for the folks who are asking. I see Texas, Minnesota, and so many other places that are just sort of scrolling past too
Cool.
fast. Yeah, everybody's just popping in saying hi.
Oh yeah, lovely. Minnesota, where my grandparents live.
Where we were supposed to go.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of,
Poor grandparents.
oh yeah, no, like I had a whole bunch of travel. I have got so many books that were shipped in for, let's see, I got to do Convocation, and then there was...
Up in Michigan.
Yeah, up in Michigan. And then everything kind of blew up right after that. And then I was supposed to do Paganicon in Minnesota, and was Houston.
Bayou City
Paranormal
Symposium.
in
Yeah.
Houston. That got canceled.
But
there's-
also rescheduled. Like so far everything's been rescheduled, I think.
Yeah, I think most everybody's just... And a lot of the, like...
New Mexico.
New Mexico, yeah. Hello
My
from Hey,
favorite.
Kelvin. We miss you. Kansas City, Missouri.
My grandma told me it was Missouri.
Missouri?
She's from there.
Okay, Missouri. It's like Oregon? How do
Yeah,
you
Oregon.
Oregon. As
Or Mackinac
yeah,
Island.
Oregon is how we were taught to pronounce it in school. But as I've gotten older, I've learned a lot of the things that I was taught to pronounce here in the middle of Ohio were just patently wrong.
So silly.
We were supposed to be coming to Houston. We will be coming to Houston. If things ever get back to something vaguely like normal. When was it rescheduled for?
I don't
Fall?
actually know they've given us dates for
Okay,
the,
well
the
it's
Houston one.
at some point there's a thing I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be at Houston for, and it seemed pretty cool.
A bunch of stuff is aiming for September, October.
Hello to Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, lovely.
Good to see some folks from Oz. It's pretty late where you're at, or early? I'm really bad at math, so forgive me.
What is it, like 12? No, maybe it's 16 hours. I can't keep track
See,
of
Patrick
Australia.
Keller says it's Missouri.
Really?
I suspect it might be where you're from. I mean, my last name,
That's fair.
depending on where
Yeah.
in the country they live. Like it's Belanger if you're up in the New England area, and it's Belanger in the Midwest, and Bellinger further over. So
Yep.
So if you're ever like, how the heck do I pronounce that last name? Pick a pronunciation. I'm fine.
B. I pronounce it B.
Yeah.
Michelle B.
Oh, hey, Mark. Yeah, I know a bunch of people down in the Houston area. I was thinking of maybe doing like a little meetup at a bookstore or something too, to just kind of hang out with some folks. And again, I don't have the corona. I have got allergies, so pardon my dry cough.
Oh, Arizona. The
Actually,
promised
let me
land.
open these curtains just a little bit
Do we
because
wanna walk around? Have
Yeah.
you shown people other parts of
I
the
haven't shown them everything. Like, so I don't have pictures for comparison. So this is the back half of Inspiration House. It's the addition that was built in 1909, and it was just sort of like when we first moved in here.
I've got pictures on my phone.
Okay, yeah,
that
because
I'll
it
be
was
able to share on the screen.
it was just sort of I don't know the
crazy.
It was the clutter place. Like I think
Yeah.
one of them had moved. Like this house was owned right before us by a couple whose marriage was not just on the rocks. It had hit the rocks. It tore the
my
bottom out of the boat. Pirates had land ho and plundered, and it was just a mess.
There's actually a lot of pictures.
Okay. So we've got some pictures of what this used to look like. Okay, you got
how do
to
we-
flip. Just maybe
Okay.
flip your phone. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't have no idea. Oh,
Here we go.
See, there we go.
Yeah.
It was very different colors. Blue. Everything was blue.
This is
The
corner,
ceiling was blue.
So this is the corner where. Can you show them that corner now?
Okay. Let's do the thing. Okay.
So it's that corner and looking into the next room.
Okay.
Over here.
So like this. So these
Yeah.
walls were Robin Eggs blue.
Yeah, and the pictures are like from in the middle of painting.
Okay.
There was a nasty old carpet in here.
Oh yeah, the carpet was.
You can
Hey,
see
look,
it.
there's me.
Yeah, and there's Azashi.
And that little lip there is right over there.
Okay.
In the middle of the counter.
Let's turn
now.
around. I will say that in all of the junk that was up here, that that Fisher-Price toy that plays frequently on its own was up here amid a pile of other things that looked like yard sale finds. So Amanda, the blue was a bit much because it seemed like one of the partners' defaults was either robin eggs blue or a kind of like pale canary yellow, and like everything, including the ceiling. Like the ceiling was blue, the closet was blue, like it was just, and it didn't quite suit. So the funny thing about Inspiration House for me is the color choices I've put in here are not my normal color choices. I mean, I'm like Gothic Martha Stewart. Come on, I'm it's gonna be like you would expect crushed red velvet and black and
and
like
dark purple
deep,
on the walls.
yeah, like deep jewel tone purple,
Plush
and
purple carpeting.
no hardwood floors all the way, always.
Okay.
But like dark wood, and this is more. I went with like how the house felt, like what felt like it was gonna fit, and I think my best way of explaining it is the house didn't like the colors that they had chosen for putting it in. So anyway,
House has better taste than the previous.
we've been busy doing things. So this back area now is what we call the Creator's Suite, and the goal is to have a space that someone who's working on a project, who just needs to get away, who needs to be on a retreat, can come and spend a couple of weeks by themselves in the quiet. And they've got their little kitchenette, which we just had installed. It still needs the counters.
Yeah. But that
and then
happen before the end of lockdown.
there didn't used to be a door here or that back porch. It just was nothing. Like there was no way out of these back rooms. And then we've got the sleeping area with the lovely shelving and whatnot.
And the library.
And then the library, which is another part of it. So we'll go backwards into this. And some of these are books that we brought. Some of them are books that came with the house. My favorite part of this library is we've got these two big, overstuffed, delightful leather chairs that are both recliners. And I feel like I'm sitting and, I don't know, broadcasting masterpiece theater and giving you commentary on tonight's performance in my very, very bad British accent. You'd think it would be better. I listen to Jack Osborne all the damn time now.
It all depends on if you want to be from where he's from or from somewhere else.
I used to be better at faking accents and stuff, but I just don't care anymore. A good question is, have we done metal detecting on the property? I have not personally, but we have a wonderful friend. She goes by Bird, and she's got a metal detecting thing, and she spent an entire afternoon going through the whole backyard.
Hours.
Yeah, and it was not as exciting as it could have been. She found a lot of square nails. She found an old faucet that was probably from, it was some utility, like little like outdoor thing. Nothing too fancy. No coins. There were one or two places of like, I think something might be here, but she wanted to get it in before we put in the porch, because she was afraid of like things getting disturbed. So she got to most of the backyard. The area that I'm really interested in terms of like what might be there is there's this sort of koi pond. When I do pictures of the backyard here, you see sort of a riot of daffodils and English ivy, and there's like the little white wrought iron tea set out there with like the little chairs and table, and that is apparently a koi pond. Somewhere underneath there is a koi pond. There are no fish left anymore. There are some frogs, but it's been derelict. To give you an idea of how long that's been derelict, the realtors who sold us the house only in like the last 6 months of selling the house even realized there was anything there other than a bunch of fucking daffodils. And since this was an old farmhouse and it was initially built in, starting in 1869, I do have some wonder of like, if there was a well, where was the well? And that would be the likeliest place for the well. There's also some debate about were there people buried on the property. I don't think that there was a family graveyard, but we did find several curious pieces of stonework that were just sort of like lumped in a wood pile in the back, and we're still trying to track down someone who can identify what those are from. There's every chance that the couple that owned the house before us just bought them at like estate sales or something and tossed them around in the garden to look chic and weird. Like they were that sort of... They had a lot of expendable money. Like they just sort of bought random stuff and stuck it around this house on a pretty regular basis. So, I don't know. And then, of course, there's the carriage house, which has a whole bunch of interesting stuff. One really curious piece in the carriage house. So the family that bought the house, or that built this house, were carriage makers. The last name was Penfield. They were a really big extended clan out here, to the point where like there's a town called, there's Penfield Township. Like they've got things named after them all over here. And it's one reason that, like on the books, this is sometimes called the Penfield House. And it was the father making it for his son. As they were carriage makers, they were known for their woodwork. So a lot of the fancier woodwork that's in the front half of the house, they did by hand. And in the carriage house, there's what looks like a backboard to a carriage that I think might be their original work. Again, we haven't had anyone who's able to confirm that for sure, 100%, but it looks pretty cool. And it's got that sort of like rustic, but also artsy Americana feel to it. So, oh, Judy, yeah, I should pimp that a little bit. So, I don't know how many of you guys have been watching Hellier, and if you haven't watched Hellier, I recommend watching Hellier because binge it, and that shit's free on YouTube, so you might as well. Hellier 1 and 2 are probably the most genuine representations of a paranormal investigation I've ever seen on television. They don't really cut out the long moments of just sitting around spitballing the question of what the fuck is going on. Mm-hmm. And they get to, like, you get to sit in on the process, on the actual quest, which to me is really the meat of it. Like, it's why most of us keep coming back. It's not sitting for hours in an allegedly haunted location going, if that was you, could you knock again? Because, like, that gets old the first 3 times. What's really engaging for most of us, for me for sure, is the what is this? What could this be? Do we know? How do these things tie in? Like, what does this really mean? And Hellier is all about that. I mean, it starts with some like really weird conspiracy sort of shit that takes them to caverns in Kentucky chasing goblins. Like, it's a crossover between a paranormal investigation, a UFO investigation, cryptid investigation, and a lot of magic and just, it's really fucking cool. So, pardon my French on that. And mad props to the Newkirks and to Carl Pfeiffer and to the whole crew for, honestly, what was probably, like, totally out-of-pocket, thankless work to just put this documentary out there. And I like the conversation. I like the way that they've been shifting the conversation on the paranormal. And Greg reached out to me a couple of days ago. He's going stir crazy. We're all going stir crazy. And he's like, hey, how about a little virtual mini con in May? Would you like to do a thing? We'll record you doing a talk. And he's like, you've got the Dictionary of Demons 10th anniversary edition coming out later. Like, I want to help promote stuff. So if you want to talk about demons, and I'm like, I'm down for talking about demons. So I will be talking about demons, possession, and exorcism, and their roots in, honestly, like Sumer, basically the roots of our beliefs about these things. It's not necessarily going to be like, how do you identify a demonic spirit in your haunting? I'd rather get into, why do we believe that there are demonic spirits? Where do our beliefs and definitions of demons come from? where do our practices for what constitutes possession and how one effectively exercises something like that, where do those ideas come from? And the answer is, for Western civilization, Sumer, Babylon, Akkad, and like the Fertile Crescent, and the religious and mythological inheritance of that area, its influence on Judaism, Judaism's influence on Christianity and Islam, and all of those tied up in a bow with Hellenic culture and its inheritance upon our culture right now. So we will talk about demons and daemons and all of the nifty things like that. And Greg was very smart. He knows me. He gave me like the end of the night slot so I can run over a little bit, because you know I will. And I mean, like, if you've followed any of my stuff, like I started off, for most of you folk who know me on TV, I started off in Paranormal State, which was, there was a very Catholic vibe to a lot of the approaches with demons. There was definitely the influence of Lorraine and Ed Warren on Ryan and, you know, Father Bob and that. And while not every case that Paranormal State investigated was demonic, certainly the very Catholic criteria for demonic infestation, obsession, and possession was a part of that show. I was brought on in part to be a counterpoint to some of those approaches. As pagan clergy, I have a completely different perspective. Now, I'm not going to say there aren't such things. There are definitely spirits that I will classify as demonic, but I also will say, and you can take this to the bank and cash it, 99% of the cases on paranormal television that people claim to be demonic are not. They're just not that widespread. Everything is not a demon. I have been in various YouTube episodes and things saying not every dog fart is a demon, and let me explain that. Like, there's that theory that like bad smells are demons, like you smell something nasty and clearly that's an indication of demonic presence. That could just be your dog farting, guys. Like, not every bad smell is a demon. Not every time something knocks 3 times is a demon. Like, it's... We jump to that because of media portrayal and pop culture portrayals, and not merely paranormal reality, but also the media stuff that we've been fed on since the 1973 Exorcist and before. So there's a lot to talk about with that, and it's a topic that I dig into a lot. For pretty good reasons. Like, I went to a Jesuit Catholic college. I'm one of, if not the only, folks who are active in the paranormal community who has an academic background in demonology. I took demonology from Dr. Joseph Kelly at John Carroll. So like, this is like I've got the scholarly credit to back up a lot of the stuff, and you know, was encouraged in my undergrad education to read not just the Old Testament stuff on it, but the extra biblical writings about it, to study Origen and Irenaeus, Tertullian, the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Jasher, all of these things that like explore interesting intersectional spaces of angels, demons, fallen spirits, things that have had a fantastic impact on our beliefs, which the origin has been sort of like lost to time because those are pretty obscure texts at this point. I remember live tweeting a whole bunch of stuff out of the Book of Jasher that has a really interesting take on the Sodom and Gomorrah story. And most people are like, where are you even getting this from? So if you're ever curious about any of that, there is a website, because I don't know about you guys, but when I grew up, I was poor as shit. So getting books, I was either getting them from libraries or getting them like given to me by relatives who were slightly better off than we were. And the reason I've got the library that I've got now, like I'm just surrounded by books. Partly, I was on a full ride scholarship, and the Jesuits funded my occult library. They don't know it, but they did. I was given a stipend of about, I think, $2,000 every semester for books. And I would scrimp and save and like borrow textbooks and then have stuff left over. And then I would buy the books that I really wanted to study.
Well, you just had to use it for the books you wanted.
Oh, well, yeah.
Clearly.
And there was something fun and subversive in buying like books on black magic and old grimoires and stuff with the Jesuits' money. I mean, that was sort of very on brand for me.
There was a
But let me say the website. If you're ever looking for like copies of the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jasher, if you want to look into the Midrash, is it the Chronicles of Jeremiel, which has the Midrash of Shemhaziah and Azael, some stuff on the Watcher Angels, Nephilim, things like that, go to sacred-texts.com. It's not just Christian stuff on there either. The fellow who founded it had this vision of creating a free online library that had the sacred texts of all religious traditions the world over. And he didn't differentiate. Like, he didn't say that only this one's a religion or only that one's a religion. Like, if it was a text that dealt with belief or spirituality at all, he went out of his way to get it on there and have it uploaded. And he's passed on, did so kind of suddenly and unexpectedly, but, you know, people who are close to him and who love the vision of the project have maintained it since. And it's free to all. If you are really feeling like you love what's up there, they've got like these CD-ROMs that you can buy or a thumb drive you can buy of like the entire site. So, you know, the internet goes down, you can have it just on your tablet and read it whenever you want, which is fantastic. And you will find everything on there from Crowley's Book of the Law to the Book of Jasher to the Upanishads, the Rig Veda, the sacred writings of the Yazidi, the Baha'i. Pick a world religion as obscure as you can imagine, and it probably has some stuff up there. It's great. Hello to Pakistan. Welcome and hi.
So there was a really interesting question that scrolled past.
Okay, yeah, because I get
yeah,
talking and I don't see anything.
So someone was wanting to know if you had ever, as a medium, if doing readings and having those psychic abilities had ever caused you any physical health issues. And I thought that was really timely.
Yeah, that was really timely. So, I mean, yesterday, well, there's a couple, I'm not sure. There's a couple of instances. First of all, one of the reasons that I don't do readings professionally, I don't do readings for hire, is it does definitely take something out of me. And in connecting to people, you know, most people, if they're reaching out to someone like me with questions about loved ones who've passed away, those people are in some sort of emotional distress. You know, they're in mourning, or they're anxious about what's going on with that person, or if it's not about talking to dead people and it's just they want to know what's going on in their lives or what to expect from the future, there's a level of anxiety at the very minimum that comes with that. And that takes a pretty big toll. I think the hardest ones, both to turn down and to even consider doing, I've been getting a number of requests to investigate murders, to help. The three that I can think of, the murder itself was either solved or handled by the police. So like the police aspect is over. Because my answer for working with the police to investigate a murder is like pretty much a no right across the board, because I would never want to live in the reality where the word of any person like a psychic or anyone claiming to be a psychic could lead to an arrest. Like police work needs to lead to the arrest. Like you could maybe have someone say, hey, go look for the body over here. But at the end of the day, you need to have the body, the evidence, like actual physical things. Like I've got some very, very strong opinions about that. And they differ strenuously from another Ohio local medium, Marianne Winkowski. Like we do not see eye to eye on certain attitudes about the application of psychics with police work. So anyway, these particular requests have been after all of that has been handled, and like they still didn't have closure. And I turned these down because I did agree to do one or two, and they're exhausting to I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. You know, going into a haunted location where whatever happened was like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, you know, because I live in a country that's fairly young, and most of the places I'm going to, it's not like they're taking me to, you know, Native American lands where we're too respectful to go poking around like that, if we can help it. But, you know, it's a house like Inspiration House, you know, built in 1869. So, you know, a lot of the deaths and things that are marked here are older. When we're talking about something that happened in the past 10 years, the psychic impact is incredibly raw. The pain that not just that person felt, but like everybody connected them felt. And I remember somebody asking if I was an empath. And I quietly thought to myself, like, well, that's a kind of silly question because of course I am. I mean, we come up with these labels, and I think the very nature of a label makes most people assume that once you're in that box, you can't be in the other boxes. And the reality of psychic ability is it's kind of an umbrella term for a lot of different facilities, a lot of different perceptions. And each person's sort of cluster of abilities is different. And for myself, I pick up on people's energy. That energy transmits a lot of emotion, sometimes memory, sometimes like full body recollections, like I've stepped into their skin and am perceiving exactly what they went through, like down to like physical perceptions and everything. That doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it's incredibly intense. And the more recent that is, the harder it is to extricate like my own point of view from it. So the episode I'm thinking about from Paranormal State that really wrecked me, I don't even know what title it had. I don't appear on the episode they shot around me because it was the first time I learned that you could be too psychic for privacy laws. It was in Mason, Ohio. And a woman who was I think she was in her late 20s, early 30s, had hung herself in her garage 2 weeks before we showed up on the property. Now, the thing is she was the initial person who had reached out to us, asking for us to investigate the house. And the harsh reality of it is when you are on a reality television show like that and you are traveling the country and pulling the hours that you pull for that, keeping up on emails is incredibly hard. And so the team did not get back to her, and she despaired and she hung herself because she felt like there was nobody listening. So there's that piece where on some level the team sort of felt like responsible for her death. Her sister picked up the torch and reached out to us, and so we came out for the sister. And like, given the way I insist on being cloistered for these, I don't know any of this going in. I do a walkthrough through the house. I walk out of the house. Ryan says there's another building that he wants me to investigate. I'm still blindfolded. And like just going toward it, I felt a pushback. I didn't like it. And the house was bad enough. Like the house was just, I mean, you could smell human piss in several of the rooms. Like it was bad. It was just a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, just a lot of bad. So blindfolded, I make the statement, I don't really want to go forward, but it's my job, so I'm going to. And he has me stand exactly where she died. And here's the thing: is Marion? It's in Ohio. She was fairly close to my age at that time. So we had a similar cultural background, a similar geographical background, a similar age group background. And clicking into everything that she felt in those moments, like what led her to hang herself in that space, it was the hardest reading I'd ever done to pull myself back out of. And the first time where I essentially had like psychic reading PTSD. I don't know how else to describe it, but first of all, I ended up, in the hotel by myself that night, and about 4 a.m., like I could not find the dividing line between the emotions I had picked up from her and how I myself personally felt. So, of course, I'm on, like, the NDA where I can't talk about what the case is. And I pop onto Twitter and I'm like, I can't tell you what's going on, but show me cat pictures or cute animals or something. Talk to me, anything to bring me back to the world. Because I couldn't get the despair and the hurt and the trauma and the suicidal ideation out of my head. And that's not me. And I knew enough to know it wasn't me. And yet I couldn't pull it out of me. Now, a couple of people were like, well, does that mean you brought home an attachment? And I was like, no, that's just being witness to that kind of trauma is a trauma by itself. It takes a certain amount of training, and I think one of the only reasons I'm good at it, I'm equipped for it, is, part of my undergrad work was in psychology. I was looking to becoming a therapist or counselor, right up until I have some ideological differences, especially at that time period with the sort of Prozac Nation approach. And that was really, really big at that time, which is why I got out of psych in my undergrad days. But I was literally 2 classes away from completing a psych degree. So I've got that background, and any therapist, any counselor will tell you that bearing witness to another person's trauma is a type of trauma that you must learn how to separate yourself from and deal with. But there are still times where it will overwhelm you and it will tax you, and you have to find ways to have solid boundaries and indulge in self-care to keep yourself separated from all of the horrible stuff you have to listen to. As a psychic, it's a couple of steps further. It's not just listening to somebody's trauma. It's not just watching them in your consulting room, break down and cry or shake or anything. It's stepping into their own shoes in some cases. It's feeling it like it was you, and still having to find a way to get a separation between you and what you are allowing into yourself, so that you can, as accurately as possible, read and report on this particular haunting, residual energy, whatever it is. So, yeah, witness. Yeah, yes, Mark Stevens. I have used that terminology as well. Like, I am bearing witness to what has happened in these places, and trying to make sure that I'm observing it as a witness as opposed to being in it as a witness. But sometimes it doesn't matter how good your training is. Like, sometimes you get overwhelmed, you get in over your head. And in that case in Marion, Ohio, I was way in over my head. The next several episodes for Paranormal State, when I put the blindfold on, I flashed back to that reading. We had a psychologist on call. He went with us on a number of the episodes. You don't see him most of the time because I think the producers for Paranormal State, like, somehow thought it undermined, like, the validity of hauntings if we had a psychologist also making commentary about the psychological impact of the haunting, which, don't get me started on that, but I was very fortunate that I could talk to him and say, hey, I think I'm a little messed up right now. Like, I need to talk about this.
Do you want to take a walk around more of
Yeah,
house? We've only
yeah.
seen, like 3 of the rooms.
Oh yeah,
There's-
well,
there's
this
so
is
many
this is like
more.
the creator suite stuff, and I got comfortable in my chair. I like my leather chair. We have a fancy bathroom that we put into, with a lovely shower, and so that's the creator suite. Oh, I gotta brag. I had friends
Oh my
buy
gosh.
me this fantastic old typewriter. It's an Underwood. So anyway, so those of you who are not, it's funny. We dropped literally as I moved from one side of the house to the other. So for those of you not totally familiar with Inspiration House, when we first got the house, there's this bathroom, and that addition was only accessible through the bathroom. And then it just went straight back, and there was no other way in or out. Which, honestly, as much as I liked the house, that was the one thing that was kind of like almost the deal breaker of like, who the fuck did it? Whose idea was that? So this is the upstairs of the main part of Inspiration House. And we've got the... I'm really regretting not having the selfie stick at this point.
Oh no.
That's
You want
okay.
me to hold it and I can...
I'm good for now.
Okay.
This is the four-poster queen room, sometimes called the Lilac Room. Oh, the photos. So we've started to put up some new art in here, and the photos. Let me go back here because I'm really. Illyria's mom was an astronomer and traveled the world to all kinds of different things, especially catching eclipses. So there's all sorts of pictures of eclipses on our walls. But she loved she was also an amateur photographer. And there are so many pictures of standing stones and sunsets and sunrises and everything else in things that Illyria came with. And I did a thing at the beginning of the year and had a bunch of them put up on canvases. I've also been in the process of getting them scanned and donating them to, or at least putting them up on Getty Images so people can make use of them. So that is one of Judith Young, Dr. Judith Young. She went by Joyous Judy. And I call it 7 rays because if you look very carefully, she caught like a perfect spread of 7 rays of sun. It's pretty cool.
That one I recognize because there's those two little stone groups right there.
Yeah, is that?
That is the sun wheel.
Okay, so that's in Massachusetts then.
Yeah, it's like a mile from where I grew up, where she put up a stone circle to measure the seasons.
And then the one here is a watercolor by Pop Pop, who is Illyria's great-grandfather?
Yeah.
There's several of his watercolors around.
Here, Massachusetts.
Actually, yeah, several more of Pop Pop's watercolors went up into the Lilac Room. I'm hoping that they don't make it too busy. But, so, there's one there, and one there, and one there. Yeah. But they sort of like go with the general like feel and colors in that room. And then we've got the king room.
Man, it smells really good in here right now. That's kind of awesome. We haven't been
Yeah,
here.
no, it smells like somebody's cologne.
Does it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. But faint enough that it's
Yeah, no,
not,
it's
like,
faint.
annoying.
Anyway, this house, talking about not every dog fart is a ghost or a demon, this house generates smells. Not bad ones, though. Let's see, here's another Joyous Judy photo of Stonehenge. I really didn't think that you could have too many pictures of Stonehenge until Illyria moved in with all of her mom's photos. You can, in fact, have too many pictures of Stonehenge. There are so many.
All 10 boxes of printed photos from Stonehenge, which is
Yeah.
now whittled down to like 2 boxes.
Yeah, no, it's so many things. Other things that are on the walls here a lot that very much are. A couple came with the house, but Illyria likes maps, so there are maps everywhere. And down we go. The original banister. These are not original.
Well, somebody's telling you there's a spirit here at Inspiration House. Are you surprised?
Oh, I'm not surprised at all. There's a bunch. I saw the dog just earlier.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, this place is really busy. I mean,
Yeah, it's very active. It's why I got the house. So we bought this house. I wanted a training ground for psychics, and for people who don't necessarily think of themselves as psychic, but someplace that was as harmless a haunting as possible, which sometimes is hard to come up with. Like there's all of the really. Most of the haunted locations that are come to this haunted location, it's like the Axe Murder House, the Villisca Axe Murder House, or the Lizzie Borden House, or it's Madison Seminary. It's places where terrible stuff happened. And if you are just starting out as someone trying to understand those abilities, I think it is best to have a place that is a cozy haunting, some place where it is active, but it's not traumatizing. Like, if you're going to step into somebody's perspective, let it be an old widow who's living the last years of her life in a house that she loves. And yes, there's quite a few. Tony has done investigations here. I've got a couple of YouTube things with Tony Santori and his EVPs of something hollering in the basement. There's more of Joyous Judy's work in the background. Yes, that's actually a really good shot of the front hallway. The only thing that I'm not going to say negative. There's something that I think might be tied to the property. It might be connected to the towns in Underground Railroad history that seems very urgent. And that's the thing that I believe Tony has caught on his EVPs, screaming, like just trying to communicate with such urgency that it clipped the microphone like 3 times in the first time that it was recorded. And like over time, it seems to have gotten to know Tony specifically, like he's the one who tries to communicate with it the most. And that urgency has kind of like stepped back, but it'll still sometimes come through really, really loud. We've had a couple of different groups investigate here, and shadow figures have been captured. Somebody did one of those, that connect thing, and there was a person, I perceive somebody who walks up and down this hallway. I've got a pretty good idea of who he is, what his connection to the house was. One of the things I try not to do is I try not to give too much away for people who want to do investigations here. I've got a book of everything that I have researched, including I've tracked down the death certificates of several of the folks who died on the property. No one was murdered. Everybody died of old age. I mean, like, it just, like right across the board, there were people who lived and died in the house and, spent 20, 30, 40 years here. But one of those residents is an older gentleman, and he just sort of shuffles up and down here, and someone got that like connect thing, and you see him like walk down the hallway and kind of nod to the person who's standing there. It was pretty cool. Let's see, the display room, which is probably closed up. Haha, it's open, yay. Let me turn a light on so we can see this. What kind of paranormal investigator would I be if I don't have my own haunted museum at this point, huh? Not just a haunted museum, though. Like, what I wanted with this space was, like, learning stuff. Not just items that are haunted, but items that are instructional. So I've got, probably my favorite thing that's here is the little Fisher-Price toy that came with the house. That little thing just sort of randomly plays on its own. There's a little galvanic skin response tool that Bill Murphy used on Fact or Faked. That is the original blindfold that you saw me wearing on Paranormal State. It is well past its expiration date, so I stuck it in a display case. Because why not at that point? And here's the only proof that I know of that shows that I met Hans Holzer, because I was a guest at UNIFCon, which was the Paranormal State Cruise convention in 2006. It's how I got to know them, and it's probably why I ended up on the show. And let's see. The artwork behind me is by a friend named Griff, who, along with my student, Kat Mason Rogers, does energy body readings, and then artwork that is kind of a representation of the energy that they perceive. He and Kat both have been instructed by me in that technique. Energy body reading is a primary thing that I teach. I practice a thing that's a type of energy work that is, it's really my own thing. It's got some things in common with Reiki. It's got some things in common with Qigong. It was just some stuff I came out of the box doing since I was a kid. And a lot of my study in energy work was basically a quest to go, is this real? Like, you know, is this thing that I've been doing since I can remember, is this real? Yeah, so Griff's work and Kat's stuff are fantastic. And Kat has just been furloughed, so I wish I could remember how. Kat Rogers, she's up on my thing. You can find her through any of my social media. Give her commissions if you've got the money to do so, because she's currently without a job like so many others. Griff, on the other hand, is head of security at a hospital, and he has way more work than he possibly can handle right now. Let's see. Automatic writing. Here is a representation of automatic writing from another student who was an interesting study over multiple years into a phenomenon known as glossolalia and xenoglossia. She was very interesting in the fact that she didn't only... Glossolalia is speaking in tongues, and the difference between glossolalia and xenoglossia, I know that's a mouthful, is glossolalia, it's not really a language. Xenoglossia, it's a language that you do not know, that you are nevertheless speaking spontaneously, usually in trance. Glossolalia is something that is documented in a number of religious traditions, from Pentecostal Christians to other things the world over. And in that student's case, she would speak stuff, but she would also then write things down, which led to some interesting research with linguistics and a couple of like blind tests of scholars to go, hey, do you recognize this language? And in several cases, they did. The cool thing was the student didn't have the kind of educational background where she could be faking it. It was really cool. It just, I don't know, I love my job, guys. Here's another fun thing. This is the doll house, sorry for the shaky cam, that Illyria's great-grandfather, not the one who has the watercolors, but the other one, made for her grandmother and great-aunt. And Illyria's grandmother, her name was Vera. And Vera was the lady scientist who discovered dark matter, Vera Rubin. And so this is Vera Rubin and Ruth Rubin's childhood dollhouse. It is not exactly haunted, although there's something irresistible about dollhouses to little kid ghosts, and I think a little kid ghost came with that. So it didn't come haunted, but definitely things have been moved around in it now since it got relocated here to Inspiration House. It's a beautiful dollhouse. When he built it, it was built in the 1930s. He worked for General Electric? Nope. No. Okay, well, he was an electrical engineer. Anyway, he wired the dollhouse so it had working electrical lights. And, yeah.
I have finally done the thing that we were talking about doing.
What was it?
So all your class videos
Oh.
on your website are now 50% off.
Okay, yeah.
And there's a secret discount code that you can enter, which is stay home.
Hey, if you like hearing me talk, I don't, but if you like hearing me talk, I have a ton of class videos up on my YouTube. And now YouTube has started to change this. I'm going to look into their new thing where you can basically subscribe to a channel and automatically get access to all this. But I've been recording these classes and just sticking them up on YouTube on private links. And then we sell them through the website. And you can, like, pay $20 and then go get access to the class. So they are all 50% off. They are all, that makes them, what, $10 each?
Yep.
So they are...
There's a secret discount code you have to enter to get the 50% off, which is stay home.
Oh, hey, so the secret discount code is stay home. If you pop over to my website and you want to learn about, let's see, psychic development, there's a bunch of past life regression stuff up there. There's various things about spirits, investigations. I don't even know at this point, like I teach a lot of classes on a lot of different topics. But the code is stay home. All one word? Mm-hmm. All one word.
And the specific link on your website, it's michellebelanger.com/class
Okay.
to find that.
You could
All
probably navigate your way over there
Yeah,
if
you
you
can.
poke around in it.
Yeah.
If you're a Gen Xer or a Boomer and, like me, kind of like go to websites and fumble around trying to figure out where any of the anything is. My website name is my first and last name. I'm trying to get... there we go. I keep moving in and out of the light and making things difficult for people. So yeah, my website is my first and last name.com. Michelle Belanger, or Belanger if you're having trouble spelling that. I should put it in the chat.
That's what I just did.
Yay, okay, that's
'Cause
good.
how can you type and talk and be so charming at the same time?
I
Two
don't...
of those, yes, but not all three.
I can walk and chew bubble gum
Really?
most of the time.
Okay, I can do that too.
Okay, see, Illyria has helped that.
Yay.
Hey, oh yeah, miss you guys.
Oh,
And the
yeah, hi,
Wolfies and
Jennifer.
everybody.
Aw.
And this is the kitchen.
Yeah.
Pin the website. Do you know how to pin?
Yeah,
Pin
yes,
it,
I
pin
do.
it. Because Illyria's on it. Because, yeah. And there's a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff on the YouTube channel that is free also. Because I believe, again, as a kid who grew up poor, not everybody's going to have even the $10 for a class. So there are a bunch of episodes with Adam Kimmel, with my student Becca Kirschbaum, interviews with Ilfie Music and a bunch of other people, and just a lot of other random stuff. So if you're bored and you just kind of want to go down the rabbit hole of all of the Belanger weirdness, there's just a ton of stuff up there. There are videos from stuff here at Inspiration House, a couple of the EVP captures that Tony Santori did, and all of that stuff is not behind a paywall. That's just up there where you can go poke at it. I am like in and out of light here. What the Yeah. I'm gonna go sit in the parlors. Even though it's really like orangey bright in here because it's the part of the house that faces the west and the sun is setting. I will sit in the chair that I prefer when I'm teaching classes here. Okay, so yeah, we've pinned stuff, and my shaky cam, I apologize. Do I host or teach any psychic classes? Yes, I do. Actually, it's one of the reasons we bought Inspiration House was to have a place for classroom stuff. We do, when we're not on quarantine and lockdown, in-person retreats here where people will spend the weekend, and it will be like a whole weekend intensive of instruction tailored to the people who stay. And that's usually like maybe 5 people at most. I prefer small classes. We do at least one guided meditation or past life regression. For those weekend retreats, the one rare thing that you get that I don't really do much of anywhere else is that energy body reading thing that I mentioned. I do an energy work session on everybody to do. It's one of the few times where I do a psychic reading. It's just not what most people expect as a psychic reading. My real skill, like the real focus of my ability, where I feel it shines, is being able to read a person's energy, where it flows, where there are potential problems with it, assessing like what's going to work for them, how they are built, how they energetically interact with the world, and how they could best unlock that. So basically think of it as I'm a psychic MRI. I can see, and some of that spills into what they call medical intuitive stuff, although I think of that as secondary to what I'm really reading are the pathways of energy that move through the person's body, not just the aura, not just the chakras, but also the energy channels, the whole way in which that person's body and energy interface. And that type of reading, its best use is to give a person an idea of like where to start to work with their particular energetic sensitivities, like how, are they someone who is going to be more traditionally psychic, like their third eye is open, they perceive things in a very cerebral, sort of visual way, or are they somebody who's a little bit more of an empath? It's more focused down in their heart. And so it's not going to be the shiny images like, surround sound and technicolor so much as just feels of a space. And that's a type of psychic. It's just we don't think of it as psychic as much. Or are they the third sort where they probably have never thought of themselves as psychic because it's just they walk into a room and they have a gut instinct about things or about people. It's so quick and so instinctive to them that they never think of it as an image. It's not names. It's not anything. It's just knowing. And those three primary ways, like that cerebral, visionary psychic, the sort of like heart empathic psychic, and then the gut instinct psychic, they're different ways that people perceive. And by my beliefs, by my own perceptions, you can tell based on how a person's energy flows, which one they are going to be preferentially biased toward, like which one their body processes stuff best as. I'm not explaining it great, but anyway, so the weekend retreats, that's part of it. Now, I also do classes here, and of course, Inspiration House, when we are not on lockdown, is open for people to just come and explore and just spend the night on their own time. So that way you don't have to arrange just to have time with me. I run a group, and I do have very limited personal students, and that's a case-by-case basis, and I only take one or two at a time as long-term students, which the reason for that is that type of like actual like direct mentorship. There's a couple of criteria I need for that, and I only do one or two folks at any one time simply because I want to make sure that I can give them as much time and energy as they deserve. And to be fair, I am an introvert. If I were left to my own devices, I would probably never leave my house. I might not leave my office. My wife can attest to this.
Yes, I can. But
Like-
every so often I can lure you out, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I once I get going, I'm fine at talking with people and stuff, but I prefer books and my interior world and gaming, and if I don't have a whole lot of spoons for being social most of the time. So it's why you will see me be really active in short bursts in social media, and then I'll disappear for 2 or 3 weeks, because it's just sort of the way, that's just sort of the way I work. Not really convenient for somebody on TV, let me tell you. But, it's who I am. Let's see. Yeah, that type of reading, like, if they're talking about like I'm gonna do a reading on, I designed a set of tarot cards, but I don't do readings for hire. There have been, the only times that I have done that type of psychic reading has been at charity events to raise money for something. There's a couple of reasons why I don't do that type of psychic reading. One of which is I have a hard time putting what I think is a fair price on it for what it actually takes out of me to do. And I also have some personal ideological issues, because a lot of the people who are coming for readings like that honestly would be better served talking to a therapist first. And that's not to say that it means that they've got, like, that they're crazy. It means that what they're looking for is someone to talk certain questions and anxieties out with. And I think that those people are ill-served with a tarot reading instead, like someone who has more of a background to help them get to the real root of the questions is way better for those situations. So on one hand, I don't like playing cheap therapist if I'm doing a psychic reading. And on the other hand, especially when it's talking about, especially when somebody wants to talk to a deceased relative, I really recommend instead looking into the work of Elisabeth Kubler-Ross first. If what you're struggling with is closure, is the actual process of grieving and letting go, look into methods of doing that that don't involve a middleman. Find ways of dealing with that grief and that closure and that need to connect yourself. It's perfectly normal and natural to need that, to want to have connection. And I don't think the process is best served by having someone like me kind of pat your hand and say, they're in a better place, they're fine. Believe me because I'm psychic. I think for it to really have the most meaning, you need to be able to feel that for yourself. And again, that's my opinion. It's part of my ideology, but it's why I won't do it. Fun story, Elisabeth Kubler-Ross. She's the person who, those stages of grief, if you've heard about them, that's her work. Fantastic psychiatrist, psychologist, also was into table tipping and spirit communication. They don't cover that part in a lot of her things. But like a lot of death workers, it wasn't just about the living and the end of life and the closure. It was also about the closure for the deceased. It was also the process for them. Like she did a lot of bridge work, or what I think of as bridge work. But I mean, I didn't mean to get off on a rant, but like the main thing is I don't like taking money for that kind of work. Partly because I don't think that it's possible to set a price to it that's fair for both parties. And honestly, it's just easier for me to do other stuff. And at the end of the day, like the stuff I'm better at, way better at than like talking to like your dead Aunt Sarah or whoever, is like the energy body readings and things. Partly because for me that helps me give you tools for doing stuff yourself. And if I have a core belief system, I do have one, it's very complicated, and way more than I want to get into here, but one of my strongest values is it is better to teach someone how to do it for themselves than to do it for them. So most of my work is about giving people the tools so that they can do it. Whether it is talking to their dead relatives or achieving closure or learning to perceive the energy in the space or doing energy work and healing, like I would rather give the tools to you, teach you how to do it, than to just like be the mystic guru who's like, wah, I've done the thing.
Here's the meaning of your life.
Yeah, I don't think, I think it's neither fair nor effective to just dictate to other people what their meaning is. The group I founded, the belief system I founded, like the main buzz phrase, the motto is seek your own truth. That means not my truth. You can learn from me. You can hear my experiences. I can tell you this is how I think the world works. But what I really want out of that is for you to go, that's interesting. And here's how this may apply to me, or maybe it doesn't. Like, disagree with me, debate it. Study other things. Don't just take one person's perspective. Never take only one person's perspective. Apply critical thinking. Apply your heart. Apply your own intuition, and make it yours. Like that's what I want out of anything when I'm teaching. Make it yours. Not just my stuff. Don't ever take my stuff as gospel. Just make it yours. Suzanne Chisson. So, question about dreams. I've got a book on dream walking. It's called Psychic Dream Walking. I've never written another book on dreams and dream walking because I pretty much did everything there. If you can find it, I'm pretty sure it's up on, I know it's on Amazon, I know it's on Amazon CA, and I'm pretty sure that there's a Kindle version.
It's on your website.
Oh, it's on my website
Well,
too.
you can get a signed copy.
Well, I know, but she's up in Canada, so it might be easier to just like grab a Kindle.
That's
Poke at that one. Everything I could say about dreams and dreaming is in there. It starts with the premise of dream walking, which is kind of where lucid dreaming and out of body intersect. But in order to talk about that ability, I have to delve into like what our dreaming mind does, like what dreams are, how to tell the difference between psychic or paranormal dreams and just ordinary garden variety stuff. It covers some of that stuff too. As someone who I don't consider myself a dream prophet because it's not like an experience I have constantly, but my grandmother, that was her main ability. She hated it. And I certainly have had some dreams that come true. And we've talked about it in a lot of the classes because we've got a couple of people where I think that's one of the most traumatizing psychic abilities ever. Because usually you can't do anything to stop the stuff that comes true. You have these dreams, they're incredibly immersive, they're usually traumatic, they're very rarely about happy, fun things. And then the stuff happens and you're sort of like sitting there stunned going, what the fuck? Like, was I supposed to do something? Like, could I have done something? Okay. Not really dreams. Visions then? Because, well, it's sort of the same. Oh God, I could get into a whole conversation about your conscious, subconscious, unconscious, and how things are communicated and how we process stuff, altered states of consciousness, and how daydreaming and light trance states happen constantly. Whether you're driving, if you're doing a repetitive task, you can have what is effectively a dream state, a visionary state. Just sitting, everybody's baking bread right now, kneading your bread in your kitchen. Your mind may wander and you are in a slightly altered state that may make you more open to psychic experiences and perceptions that you wouldn't ordinarily be having if you were sitting at work in your cubicle with all the distractions. So there's a lot of stuff. Anyway.
There was one other question.
Okay.
That I thought might be interesting. When you meet people for the first time, do you immediately pick stuff up about them? And what choices do you make about that?
So usually I am. The funny thing about being really psychic is most of the work you do is aimed at making yourself not so psychic that you're picking stuff up from people all the time. On a good day, like my ideal situation, when I first meet someone, I want to just interact with them as they are and as they present themselves. I consider it impolite to pry beyond that. So I do a lot of work, especially at conventions or appearances, to try not to read people. Now, there's a certain level of communication that happens that's somewhat unavoidable. I think that the thing I get called out on regularly, especially when I'm teaching a class that's like gallery style, is part of the way that I teach in those situations is I read the audience on a very low-key level and just sort of pluck the questions that are coming at me. So that's a little bit like there's some permeable barrier stuff there. So if like somebody's thinking something really hard at me, I'll pick that up. But I try really hard not to read people. If you see me in person, you may find that I don't shake hands if I can help it. I will hug. I've learned to hug in a way that is sort of a guarded hug that doesn't like make straight connections to certain centers. So like I'm still able to like try not to read the person. I try to only read with permission. There's a lot of stuff about psychic ethics that I at some point should probably just write a psychic ethics book because I don't think there's one out there.
Good idea.
Because I don't think that it's polite to just randomly cold read somebody on the street, somebody that you've never met before. I make every effort not to do that is the bottom line. Do some things slip through? now and then, and it really depends on where my head is at. I'd mentioned that I'm an introvert earlier and that I prefer to stay inside and at home. And that's partly because, it's exhausting to keep that much protection up all the time. And so the easiest thing is to just stay away from people. My mom was the same way. Her solution was to live in the middle of freaking nowhere. Like, I can shield. I don't find it particularly comfortable to do so. It's a little bit like walking around in PPE all the time, only psychic PPE. Like that's totally like it is. Like it's like, think of it like that. Like, okay, so a low level bit of psychic protection is like wearing a face mask, and think about how weird that feels to go out into the world and just wearing like you're wearing an N95 mask, and you're conscious of it. Like, it chafes, it's annoying, and it makes some things feel weird and muffled. And like heavy shielding as a psychic is like the full body, like visor, mask, head to toe thing. And that is not something you want to walk around in all the damn time. But if you are sensitive, like really incredibly sensitive, and you want to not pick up stuff from crowds, from people, from whatever, you kind of have to have that level of protection. And you need to learn how to put it on, how to take it off, when is the best time to like really pull out like the big guns and then have yourself covered head to foot, when you can get by with just a little mask and gloves. Yeah, psychic condoms too. Teresa, it's good to see you. I saw you earlier. I'm glad. I hope you're feeling better. Shielding, so shielding is difficult. It's not, especially if you're really sensitive, if you're used to getting a lot of impressions, where that's sort of like a natural part of like how you interact and interface with the world, it's probably better to think of it as filtering. So, let's go back with the PPE and the mask. You don't want, some people will shield like, you can't breathe through that. So rather than shielding like something that's like full, impermeable, you want something where you want a little bit of breathing. You want some stuff to come in and some stuff to go out. You just want to be able to control how much. And I've got the best freaking metaphors now. I mean, you've got like the little masks. You've got the N95 masks. You've got the N99 masks. Like, there's layers of protection. Then you've got like the full-on face mask. And filtering is like that. The light mask that really all it's doing is like a little bit of stuff, a very light filter to take the edge off of, say you're an empath and you have to go, it won't work in a grocery store now, but you have to go to a nightclub or a sports event or someplace where it's really, really busy, really crowded. You want a little bit of a permeable barrier to just keep things at just enough of a distance so that you're not overwhelmed. And you know that it's working. So, real story. I learned to anchor a lot of my filtering and shielding to items, and specifically a leather jacket. So when I was a teen and realized that I needed to get my shit together and find a way to control this stuff, my first couple of paychecks from Taco Bell, because that was like my first paid job, I bought a leather jacket. And I would go to the mall because I was a kid that grew up in the 80s and 90s, 80s really. And I would practice, if I put the leather jacket on, that was my cue to put the shielding on. And I would go to the mall when it was really busy. And I would practice by putting on and taking it off. And like testing what it felt like. What was the difference? If I went in feeling naked, how did my head feel? What emotions did I feel? If I went into like this one little shop that like had a ton of people and it was like really, really busy and they all seemed frenetic, like how did that affect me when I wasn't shielded? And then if I stepped away from it, kind of cleared that off and then put the shields up and went back to that same thing, what was the difference? How did it feel differently? And so I spent a lot of time basically doing like near, far, near, far, only with energy. And I've always had like an experimental like science-y sort of approach to stuff. So for me, like, that hands-on stuff was incredibly useful. How do you know it's working? You feel a difference. But you need to feel the difference not just one time. You want to practice with it. You want to have a reliable, confirmable experience of, if I do X, I get result Y. Not just once, not just twice, but consistently. Now, I'm in a good place with the TV stuff, where I have this fantastic opportunity to go to places and put these things to the test. But you don't have to be able to get carted around the country to haunted prisons and asylums. Find whatever is in your local area that you can work with. If you're on lockdown right now, what can you do? Get to know different spaces in your house. Every space, every house has different energy flows. We all have, like, that one room that doesn't feel right. And kind of test yourself that way. Like, ask yourself as you move from room to room, what am I feeling? Am I feeling stuff that's related to the space? Am I feeling stuff that's related to the people? Am I feeling stuff that's coming to me from a distance? I had that going on last night, where a bunch of stuff hit me and I'm like, this is not me. What's going on with the psychic network of people I'm tied in with? I think there's another question.
Yeah, so there was a really interesting question a little while back of basically, what do you think the value is of doing card readings for yourself? Like, how do you best learn from that?
Yeah, Betsy, Craig, I completely recognize your name, and it's actually good to see you guys. Do I give energy to folks? Yes, I do. So, actually, ask that in a second, because, well, Betsy's asking something that, like, I get asked a lot, because, so if you also dig around, you say, I call myself a psychic vampire, because I do have the capacity to take energy, actually the need to take energy. And one of the things that I trained myself to do, especially when I'm at events or when I'm working with people, is not taking from people, but facilitating just an exchange. Actually, most performers do this. Good performers especially do this and know how to do it. And will talk about it without even necessarily ascribing psychic abilities to it. There is a sort of energetic dialogue that happens between people in crowds, and there's the best way to do it is so that everybody is getting something good out of it. So yes, I tend to energize people. I just noticed that. Thank you. Okay, so what was the other question?
So the other question was about how to best use the information from doing card readings for yourself.
Doing readings for yourself is always a little tricky. So the first caveat is, make sure you're in a space where you can be as objective as possible about it. I would always recommend make a copy, write down or take a picture of the reading so that you've got a record of what cards you pulled. Because depending on where your head is at and where your emotions are at, you might not be able to read the full import if you're doing it for yourself. That problem with front loading, and one of the reasons that, like I'd mentioned, I won't do stuff for like law enforcement or murders or things, is I have so much of an emotional investment in trying to like solve the crime and make them pay, that I know those emotions can blind me, can get in the way of my accuracy. When we read for ourselves, it's incredibly difficult to be 100% objective. So first, know that your emotional state is going to potentially skew what you see and how you do that reading. Make every effort to be as clear-headed as possible and be as honest with yourself as possible. And failing that, also make sure you make a copy, make a record of it, because you may, in retrospect, see layers to it that you missed the first time because you were so wound up in what the question was. Otherwise, I also recommend for personal readings, to keep it as simple as possible. Keep it to like a 3-card pull if you're working with tarot, and just sort of get the lay of the land. Use it as a simple guide as opposed to something that's like trying to get into like super specifics. Because again, that objectivity and that emotional investment will make it very difficult to not get pulled off track. Oh, you come, go as you please. I'll probably post this up. It's going, how long have I been talking?
At least an hour.
Okay.
Does it say on your phone?
No, it just says how many people are up here.
Oh, holy cow. 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 12 seconds.
Okay, so I've given a 90-minute class interspersed with little bits around Inspiration House. So I think since my throat is getting a little bit on the raw side,
Yeah, I should make you some tea.
tea would be fantastic.
Yeah. And do you want to, one of the most common questions we've been getting asked is, where is Inspiration House? So could you close?
Oh, yeah.
Like how to find us?
So Inspiration House is located in Oberlin, Ohio, which was a key town in the Underground Railroad. There's an old map of it behind me. When we're not on lockdown in the middle of a global pandemic, Inspiration House is also up on Airbnb. In fact, it was featured on Airbnb in October as one of several haunted Airbnb properties. So you can rent it through Airbnb for the low price of like somewhere in the neighborhood of $175 for a night. That's the whole house, which, if I understand correctly, for haunted locations, that's a bang-up bargain. And I think that Illyria will post some stuff, and the name of the dream book, Psychic Dream Walking, is the dream book. If you're interested in my energy work technique, I have the Psychic Energy Codex. All of my books are up on my website, and there are a lot of them. I apologize, I write kind of a lot. Anyway, I just don't like pimping them out all the time. But Inspiration House is in Oberlin. I teach classes here when we are not under lockdown. I may do some more live streaming from here because it's just a comfortable space to do work in. And
Your website.
oh, my website, michellebelanger.com. I think Inspiration House also has sort of like a little stub website at inspiration36.com.
Yeah.
I think it mostly just redirects.
Yeah, but that's a good way to find the links
Yeah.
to Airbnb,
Okay.
which is a good way to like figure out when dates are available to rent the house out. And then there's the question of like, well, can you show up? And to do that, you just email me.
Yeah,
Put my email on the stream.
Yeah, and the thing with me at Inspiration House is you can book through Airbnb and then poke at me. If I have availability, we can also make an arrangement where I'm there. So, you know, I do what I can. The YouTube, let's see, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter are Seth Anakim, or just honestly just Michelle Belanger YouTube. My YouTube channel will probably come up. Like I said, there are classes there that you can pay for, and then there's a lot of free content. So just go have fun. I know like popular videos that are up there that are a little bit more professionally produced are usually the conversations between me and Becca Kirschbaum. So there's one on Ouija boards, there's one on past life memories. I know there's an interview with Elfie Music from Paranormal State. Trying to think of some other ones. There's a bunch of stuff about, with interviews between Dave Wolever and Adam Kimmel and the folks with Madison Seminary. So, and yeah, there's just stuff all over the place. It's been fantastic hanging out with people. I will try to do it again and try not to be a super hermit in these hermity times. And everybody try to take care, stay safe, find things to entertain yourself. And the only way through this is, the only way out is through. So we're in it together, right?
Bye, everybody.
Bye. I will figure out how to, oh,
Right
hey,
there.
there.
Yeah, look at that.
Look, there's a thing that says finish. Bye.